Welcome to day 10 of the 12 days of money tips. In this video, we're going to talk about the best day or time to pay your credit card debt in order to increase your credit score. Before we get into that, I do have a couple of videos on credit score. I have Credit Score 101. I will link that down below. And I also have a video on how to increase your credit score in 30 days. And that will also be linked in the description box. So the timing of your credit card payments is important if you are somebody who does want to increase their credit score. So this may just be in general that you want to increase your score, improve where you're at right now, or you may need to and really want to because you are looking into buying a home or getting a car. And so before you look into loans for that, you want to increase your score so you can get a better rate and have more money available to you. And the timing is very important, more so if you have revolving credit card debt, but even if you have a $0 balance and you pay it off every month, you can still hurt your credit score or improve your credit score depending on when you make a charge to your card and when you decide to pay it off. So let's get into that. There are two main terms to consider here. So you have your credit card due date, and this is when your minimum balance is due, your minimum payment is due for that credit card. However, there's also your statement closing date, or you may see this as your statement date or just your closing date, and that date is not the same thing as your due date. Your statement date or closing date is when charges are calculated and added to your balance. So, when you make a payment, it has one balance, and if you still have credit card debt, then you end up a few days later with a higher balance. That is because the interest is calculated, the charges are calculated, and then added to your total balance. So that is also the time when the credit card lenders typically report to the credit bureaus. The main thing here, and the most important thing, is of course to pay your minimum payment by the due date. That is the very least that you want to do. And obviously this is so that you can avoid any fees, you can avoid hurting your credit score if you pay anything too late. That is ideal. If you're in a situation where you're just getting started and you just want to make progress on this debt, that is a great starting point. Always make sure you pay by the due date. Try to avoid late payments at all costs. Set up auto pay if necessary. So that's the first thing. However, in order to increase your credit score, the best time to pay your credit card payment and or pay an extra payment is before the statement closing date. I'm going to give a couple of examples because I think that will make the most sense. And these examples, one will be for somebody who has no revolving credit card debt and one who does have revolving credit card debt. So example one, let's say you have no revolving credit card debt, but you still use your cards. That's perfectly fine. That's what I do. Take advantage of the points. And let's say your due date is the 11th of the month, and then your closing date is the 16th of the month. So you pay off your balance, you have whatever charged on your card, and you pay off your balance by the due date. So by the 11th, you pay that off and you are good. However, let's say on the 12th, you decide to make a $1,000 purchase on your credit card. So you make that $1,000 purchase and decide that you're not going to pay that until the next due date. So that is okay. You will not gain any interest on this because when you pay off your balance in full by the due date, you will not accrue interest, which is great, but this will affect your credit score. So let's say you have that $1,000 charged on the 12th, it goes through, it processes by the 16th, and now your balance is $1,000 on your card, even though you paid your minimum balance, and that $1,000 is going to be reported to the credit bureaus. And this could potentially impact your credit score depending on your utilization rate, of course. So if your credit limit is $4,000, your utilization rate is going to jump up to 25%, which will potentially lower your credit score. Now, it may not be by much, just depending on how well your finances are right now, but this could be important if you're somebody who is trying to get a house or trying to get a car, like I said, because they are going to see that. If you go to find a lender for a loan for your house, then they're going to see that your utilization rate is high depending on your credit limit, and obviously that could ding your credit score. For the second example, let's say you have revolving credit card debt, which means that you have a balance consistently on your card and maybe you're trying to pay that off. So let's go with the same due date and statement date. So your due date is the 11th and then your statement date is the 16th of the month. So you make your minimum payment on the 11th. That's good. That's great. And then you have money to make an extra payment. So maybe a couple of days later, you get some extra cash and you're like, oh, I want to pay down my debt. This is my goal right now. So the best thing for you to do is pay down that debt ASAP, because you want to pay that debt before the statement date. So if your balance was $1,000 and your minimum payment was, let's say, $100, and then you got your balance down to $900 and whatever interest, $900 by your due date, and that would be ultimately reported to the credit bureaus by your statement date. However, you decide to make an extra payment before the statement date, so then you are able to lower it another $100 down to $800, and you get that before the statement date. That lower balance will be reported to the credit bureaus. Instead of waiting to make an extra debt payment at the end of the month or maybe before the next due date, go ahead and pay it before the statement date and you will see the biggest impact on your credit score. If you don't have revolving credit card debt, then you should be good in regards to interest. But if you do have revolving credit card debt, you will be paying interest more than likely unless you have 0%. By paying more before the statement date, you can save a lot of money in interest. And this is because, like I said, your statement date is also when the finance charges are calculated and added to your balance. And typically the credit card lenders are calculating your interest daily. So that interest is compounding daily. And the less money that you have each day, the less money charged each day, then the less you will pay in interest. So it is important to make payments before the statement date because they are using every single day to determine how much you are going to pay in interest, and that amount will be added to your total balance. So the less money that you owe by that statement date, the less money you should pay in interest, and the more your credit score should go up. Now, this isn't going to work wonders and increase your score, 50 points necessarily, unless you make a really big difference, but it does help, especially if you're in a situation where you are really trying to improve it. And if you do have revolving credit card debt, you want to be careful with using your credit cards. I would say if you're on your debt-free journey to not use your credit cards at all per se, and wait until you are credit card debt-free to take advantage of the points. Because if you make a payment by the due date, which is great, but then you decide to charge again before the statement date, that will increase the interest that you pay and increase the score, the amount that is reported to the credit bureaus. So you can actually end up paying more in interest by doing that, and obviously you can decrease your score by doing that. So ideally you want to stay away from adding more credit card debt while you're on your debt-free journey, and at least make that minimum payment by the due date and then make any extra payments before the statement date to see the biggest impact. In order to find your statement date, it's typically right on the account, the home screen of your account. So your minimum payment, the due date for your minimum payment is for sure on the home page of your account. If you cannot find the statement date, open the actual statement and you'll typically find a date on that statement or just on the link to click it. It's usually a few days, within about a week after the due date, but just be sure to pay attention to it. You can change your due date, but you would have to request that and then they would adjust your statement date accordingly. But just keep in mind that the statement date is typically more important in order for you to change your score, but always aim to pay at least the minimum by the due date. At the end of the day, the ideal situation is to have $0 in credit card debt and just charge to your credit cards for the things that you need to buy. In order to take advantage of cashback and points, go back to my video where I talk about how to use credit cards strategically. I will link it down below because I think that's the best way to use credit cards and just take advantage of the free money. And in order to avoid anything being reported to the credit bureau for credit card debt, just make your payments immediately. Charge your credit card and then make the payment the same day or as soon as it is processed. Just get in the habit of regularly checking your accounts, especially when you know that you are using them. So that is it for this video. Hopefully that is helpful. Be sure to watch my other videos on credit scores and credit cards because those will be a lot of help to those of you who still have credit card debt and for those of you who want to take advantage of credit cards. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.